Okay, my name is Armfield. I'm going to present an idea for an alternate theme structure that I developed recently. I've always liked the idea, the concept of child theming, but actually I've never actually done it successfully because it always seems as though the child theme has to have almost as many files in it as a parent theme. But recently I came up with an idea that might solve that problem. Now I'm presenting it because it might be useful, but primarily because I'm looking for feedback. I think it seems like a good idea. I've got one site live with it already, seems to be working fine, but if you can know of a really bad idea, why this is a really bad idea, I want to know about it. Okay, so the perils of child theming. These are some sort of extracts from some pages in one of the WordPress default themes. It's 2012, this one. These are sort of like often sort of suggested as themes that you might want to child theme. And the main problem is that you've got like this structural HTML occurring in them. And so if I want to change, because you know what designers are like, they always come up with some curveball in the design, you might have to change the structure of the page, which means that you might have to edit at least these 4 files just to strip out that div or add a new one in or whatever like that. So why don't we get around that problem? Okay, so here's a typical page structure, one that everyone's familiar with, it's not the only one obviously, and here's some very simple HTML that would build that, styled obviously with CSS. So what if you had one file in your theme that actually defined the structure for the entire theme? That's what I was trying to work towards. And so I came out with a file called layout.php, and you can see it's very similar to the previous slide that I showed you, with the simple HTML, but it's using WordPress functions to actually pull in the various bits. A header, a banner, some navigation, some content, sidebar and footer. So what I'm doing is I'm actually breaking down the components of the theme into smaller bits. And now my index.php looks like that. Because, within WordPress, some of the early WordPress themes just consisted of an index.php and a style sheet and maybe a screenshot or something like that. And that's still true. You could just get away with having those 2 files, index.php and a style sheet. You can have whatever you want. So actually it seems to work. Now, so some of the key changes here that I've made, in my header.php, I've just got the meta tags, the scripts and the CSS now. You still need to put in WP head for putting in other bits and pieces as well. But I've broken it down now. I've got banner PHP, navigation PHP, and they contain just the code and the functions that are needed to produce the banner and the navigation. And the same is true for the footer and the sidebar as well. Looking at the content in more detail though, here is my content.php. As you can see, it's got the loop at the top, and then the title of the page and the content. And look, there's no structural HTML in there at all. So in theory, any child theme that you create, you won't need to change that for a page. But of course, in real life, themes are a lot more complicated than that. And you've got potentially a new front page, you've got a blog index page, and you've got an individual blog post. And so in the layout PHP file, you can do these tests using these standard WordPress functions, and then you can pull in the different treatments for the content using that way. And so you'd end up, with that example that I just showed you, you'd end up with these 4 files which deal with the different sorts of content that you've got going. So the advantages are, of course, my structure of my theme is only defined in one place, which means that if I want to change the layout of the theme, I only need to change that one file. Either you can child theme it, or if you just want to clone the theme and just to put it into another theme, you just need to move the bits around within layout.php, and everything else stays pretty much the same. Because each file is completely self-contained now. There is none of this starting a div in the header and ending it in the footer, which you get in most WordPress themes that I've seen, including the default ones. And so in theory, a new child theme may only need a new banner PHP to do a logo, and a style CSS, and all the other files in that theme could be exactly the same as the parent. Effectively, you could use the parent themes files. Things to watch for, I'll move along quickly. Scope of variables. If you set a variable in layout PHP for later on, it's not readily available in banner.php because of the scope of variables. So you need to use setter and getter routines to actually get the variables, but that works fine. Other things that works with, custom page templates. Instead of the index PHP, you can have those, just set the template name in there, and then you can pull it in later on there, and depending, deciding which content treatment you want to use. It also works with custom post types of tool, as well rather. The thing that's actually live that does this, and that's the end of it, actually uses all those techniques. And so there. Thanks for listening.